The phone buzzed at 2:07 a.m., and in that dim blue light, I finally saw the truth that would end my marriage and his career. At first, I thought it was a work notification. My husband, Nathan, always left his phone face down, but tonight he'd fallen asleep mid-scroll. The screen lit up, casting cold blue shadows across our bedroom. I leaned closer. The message preview read, "Can't stop thinking about earlier, same time tomorrow?" The sender, Sabrina, work. For a moment, my chest went hollow. My pulse hammered in my ears. All those late nights, the sudden guarded passwords, the client dinners that never made sense, it all snapped into focus. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake and demand an explanation, but something in me froze. Instead, I watched him sleep. His arm draped over the sheets, face relaxed, the same man who'd laughed in my face a week ago when I asked why his secretary called after midnight. "You're paranoid, Celine," he'd said. "You invent problems when things are too quiet." My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I stared at that glowing screen, my mind racing through every dismissed concern, every time he'd made me feel small for asking questions. The passcode, he swore he'd changed it for company security. My fingers moved before I could second-guess myself. I typed the old code, 0-8-1-5, our anniversary date he claimed to have replaced. The phone unlocked. The chat was open, the proof impossible to misread. Dozens of messages scrolled back weeks, private jokes, heart emojis, blurry photos taken in restaurants I'd never been to. Lines between professional and personal had blurred long ago, maybe months before I'd even noticed. My heart cracked, but my mind went sharp and clear. If he wanted to treat me like I was crazy, then I'd give him a reason to be afraid. I opened the text box and typed slowly, carefully, as him, "Let's keep it between us. She can't know." I hit send. Then I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, lay down beside my sleeping husband, and stared at the ceiling, already planning everything that would come next. My name is Celine Tate, and for months my husband had called me crazy. I remembered the dinner party 3 weeks earlier, Nathan joking with our friends about my jealous streak. Everyone had laughed. His college buddy Marcus slapped him on the back, saying, "Better keep her on a short leash, man." Nathan grinned, adding, "She thinks every woman at my office wants me." I'd smiled through it, my fingers tightening around my wine glass until my knuckles went white. His sister had leaned over, whispering, "Honey, you need to trust him more. Nathan's a good man." I'd nodded, swallowing the words I wanted to say. That night, I'd apologized to him in the car. Actually apologized for being suspicious, for embarrassing him in front of his friends. He'd accepted graciously, kissing my forehead like I was a child who'd finally learned her lesson. Now, lying in the dark with that phone between us, I realized how perfectly he'd played me. How many times had I doubted myself instead of trusting my instincts? Never again. Morning came too quickly. Nathan's alarm blared at 6:30, the same as always. I pretended to be asleep as he showered, dressed, and moved through our bedroom like nothing had changed. When he kissed my forehead before leaving, I caught the faint scent of cologne, the expensive kind he only wore for important meetings. "Don't wait up tonight," he said softly. "Big client dinner. Probably won't be home until late." I opened my eyes, giving him my best sleepy smile. "Okay. Be safe." He smiled back, confident and comfortable in his lies. The front door clicked shut 5 minutes later. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway before I moved. In the kitchen, I made coffee with steady hands. My phone sat on the counter, Sabrina's response from last night still unread on Nathan's device, which he'd left charging in the bedroom. I'd check it later, after he was safely at the office. For now, I had work to do. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, naming it something innocuous, recipes. Inside, I'd store everything I found. That afternoon, I drove to Nathan's office building in downtown Boston. He'd forgotten an important file, at least, that's what my text to him claimed. In reality, the file sat safely in his home office. I just needed an excuse to see his workspace, to watch how things operated when he thought I wasn't looking. The receptionist waved me through with a friendly smile. I'd been there dozens of times before, the supportive wife bringing her husband forgotten documents or surprise lunches. As I walked past the cubicles toward Nathan's corner office, I noticed Sabrina's desk was empty. Her purse hung on the chair, her coat draped over the back, but she was nowhere in sight. Two co-workers stood by the water cooler, their voices low but not quite low enough. "Still out with her?" one woman murmured, glancing toward Nathan's closed office door. The other shook her head slowly. "It's getting obvious. Someone should tell his wife." They fell silent when they spotted me, their faces flushing with embarrassment. I smiled brightly, waving as I passed. Inside, my stomach twisted into knots. Everyone already knew. Everyone except me. That night, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. When Nathan came home smelling like wine and expensive perfume, I confronted him in the kitchen. My voice shook despite my efforts to stay calm. "Why did Sabrina text you at 2 in the morning?" He laughed, actually laughed, as he loosened his tie. "Sabrina's like a kid sister to me, Celine. You know that. Kid sisters don't send texts like that." His expression changed, humor draining into something colder. "Like what? What exactly did the text say?" I realized my mistake too late. I shouldn't have revealed I'd seen his phone. I saw the preview when it lit up the room. "So you're spying on me now?" His tone turned icy. "You need help, Celine. This paranoia isn't healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone, get some therapy or medication or something." The words hit like slaps. I felt my certainty crumbling under his steady gaze, his confident dismissal. By the time I crawled into bed that night, I'd actually apologized to him. Apologized for not trusting him, for invading his privacy, for being a suspicious wife. He'd accepted graciously, holding me close. "I love you," he whispered. "But you have to stop this." The next morning, I called my best friend Mira from my office. We'd known each other since college, and she was one of the few people I trusted completely. When I told her everything, the texts, the late nights, the way Nathan made me feel insane for questioning him, she went quiet for a long moment. "Celine," she finally said, her voice careful. "I've heard things." My blood went cold. "What things?" "Someone from Nathan's firm goes to my gym." She mentioned seeing Nathan and his secretary at a restaurant across town, and it didn't look like a business dinner. Mira paused. "I didn't want to tell you because I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to plant ideas if it was nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything, and now even my best friend had known something was wrong before I'd fully accepted it. I thanked her and ended the call, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. That evening, I noticed Nathan had added a passcode to his phone. A new one I didn't know. "Company policy," he explained when I asked. "New security protocols for all executives." I nodded, making a mental note. There had been no company-wide email about security changes. I would have seen it. I still received his work calendar notifications in my email. My birthday fell on a Thursday that year. Nathan had promised weeks earlier that we'd celebrate with dinner at my favorite restaurant, the Italian place where he'd proposed 7 years ago. I'd made reservations, bought a new dress, spent an hour on my hair and makeup. At 6 o'clock, I sat at our kitchen table in that new dress, watching the clock. At 6:30, I called his office. No answer. At 7, I texted him. Nothing. At 7:45, I called the restaurant and canceled our reservation, my voice steady even as tears ran down my face. He came home after midnight, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. "Sorry, babe. Client emergency. You know how it is." I said nothing, just watched him grab a beer from the fridge and head upstairs. He'd forgotten entirely. My birthday hadn't even crossed his mind. The next morning, I scrolled through social media over coffee. Sabrina's account was public, I'd checked it before but never found anything concerning. This time, buried in her stories from last night, I spotted a photo, 2 wine glasses clinking together under dim restaurant lighting. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a wrist wearing a watch I recognized. Nathan's anniversary gift from 2 years ago, the one with the distinctive silver band. That night, I stood in our bathroom staring at my reflection. Mascara smudged under my eyes, hair falling out of its style, the new dress wrinkled from sitting at the table for hours. I looked tired, worn down, older than my 34 years. Maybe I am crazy, I whispered to my reflection. But then something shifted inside me. My reflection hardened, jaw setting with determination I hadn't felt in months. No. I'm not crazy. I'm right. I washed my face, pulled my hair into a ponytail, and changed into comfortable clothes. Then I went downstairs to Nathan's home office, the room he always kept locked when he wasn't using it. I'd never questioned it before, he dealt with confidential client information, after all. Tonight, I picked the simple lock with a bobby pin, a skill I'd learned from a YouTube video that afternoon. The door opened quietly. His laptop sat on the desk, closed but not locked away. I opened it, and the screen lit up requesting a password. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, his mother's name. Nothing worked. Then I tried Sabrina's birthday, I'd found it on her social media profile earlier. The computer unlocked. My hands shook as I navigated through his files. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I'd know it when I found it. His email was still open, and I started there, searching for Sabrina's name. Dozens of emails appeared. Most seemed professional at first glance, meeting notes, scheduling requests, client information. But as I scrolled deeper, the tone changed. Private jokes appeared between work discussions. Then compliments that crossed professional boundaries. Then, buried in a thread from 3 months ago, an email that made my stomach drop. Last night was perfect. Can't wait until Boston next week. Same hotel? I took screenshots of everything, saving them to a USB drive I'd brought with me. Then I dug deeper, finding his cloud storage backup. Photos, hundreds of them, automatically backed up from his phone. Most were work-related or innocent, but scattered throughout were images that told a different story. Sabrina at a hotel bar. Nathan and Sabrina in what looked like a hotel room. A selfie of them together, her head on his shoulder. I copied everything to my drive, my movements methodical despite the rage building in my chest. When I finished, I cleared the computer's history, closed the laptop, and relocked his office door. Upstairs, I created a new folder on my laptop and labeled it laundry. Inside, I organized everything I'd found. The following week, Nathan left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. I'd been waiting for this opportunity, watching for any moment of carelessness. Steam filled the bathroom as I quietly picked up his phone. The new passcode had been easy enough to figure out, I'd watched him enter it that morning through the reflection in our bedroom mirror. It was Sabrina's birthday, just like his computer password. I opened their message thread and scrolled through recent conversations, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the running water. Then I started typing, mimicking Nathan's casual texting style. We need to be careful, company eyes everywhere lately. Sabrina's response came within seconds, as if she'd been waiting by her phone. I know. I miss you already. Tonight was too short. Tonight. Last night, Nathan had claimed to be at a board meeting until 11. I took screenshots of everything, then typed another message. Same. Next week better? Counting the days, she responded with a heart emoji. I deleted my sent messages from his thread, leaving only her responses visible so he wouldn't notice anything unusual. Then I placed his phone back exactly where it had been and quietly left the bathroom. The evidence folder on my laptop grew larger. My own work at Belmont Financial gave me access to expense tracking systems similar to what Nathan's firm used. The next day, I spent my lunch break cross-referencing dates from his calendar with his corporate travel receipts. I'd always had access to his calendar, He'd added me years ago so I could track his schedule and plan our lives around his work trips. What I found made everything crystal clear. 3 business trips in the past 2 months, each showing hotel accommodations for 2 people. The second name listed under assistant accommodation was always Sabrina's. Same hotels, same floors, rooms right next door to Nathan's. I documented everything, creating a spreadsheet with dates, locations, and corresponding text messages or emails that proved these weren't legitimate business expenses. Company policy required board approval for assistant travel on overnight trips. I found no such approvals in Nathan's expense reports. They'd been committing expense fraud while carrying on their affair. I saved everything to my growing evidence file, then returned to my desk and finished my actual work with a calm smile. Nobody at my office knew anything was wrong. I'd become excellent at hiding my feelings behind a professional mask. That weekend, Nathan's mother insisted we come for Sunday dinner. The whole family would be there, his parents, his sister and her husband, his brother visiting from New York. I dreaded it but couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. We sat around the large dining table, Nathan's mother serving her famous pot roast while everyone caught up on family news. Midway through the meal, Nathan set down his fork and grinned at everyone. "You should hear what Celine accused me of last week," he said, laughter in his voice. "She thinks I'm having an affair with my secretary." The table erupted in laughter. His brother slapped the table. His father shook his head with amusement. His mother reached over and patted my hand, her smile sympathetic but condescending. "Honey, men work hard," she said gently. "Nathan's building his career. You can't smother him with jealousy. You need to trust him." His sister nodded enthusiastically. "Marriage requires trust, Celine. You can't let insecurity ruin a good thing." I smiled through their words, nodding and agreeing, playing the role of the embarrassed wife who'd overreacted. Inside, I was making a list of everyone who'd laughed at me tonight. They'd all see the truth eventually, and I'd remember every single person who made me feel foolish for trusting my instincts. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table, his grip almost painful. A warning. That night, after we got home, I did something I'd never done before. I apologized completely, convincingly, throwing myself into the role of the remorseful wife. "I'm so sorry," I told Nathan, sitting on our bed while he changed for sleep. "You're right. I've been paranoid and unfair. You work so hard for us, and I've been acting crazy." He paused, surprised by my complete surrender. Then his expression softened, pride flickering in his eyes. "I'm glad you can see that. I know work keeps me busy, but everything I do is for our future." "I know that now," I said, reaching for his hand. "You deserve my trust. I promise I'll do better." He smiled, pulling me into a hug. "That's my girl." Over the next few days, I became the perfect, trusting wife again. I stopped asking questions about his schedule, stopped commenting on late nights, stopped checking his phone or showing any signs of suspicion. I laughed at his jokes, supported his work complaints, and made his favorite meals. And Nathan, confident he'd won, started getting careless. He left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. He took calls from Sabrina in the next room without closing the door completely. He stopped being quite so careful about hiding things. I collected everything. One evening, while Nathan was in the shower, I noticed his phone lying on the nightstand. I picked it up and opened his voice recording app, something I'd never checked before. Most people forgot these apps existed, never thinking to clear their history. I found a recording from 2 weeks ago, labeled simply with a date. My hands trembled as I pressed play, turning the volume down low. Nathan's voice came through first, slightly muffled. "We've got maybe an hour before I need to head back." Then Sabrina's laugh, intimate and familiar. "An hour's enough." Silence followed, broken by whispers I couldn't make out, then her voice again, "I wish we didn't have to hide. I hate sharing you." "Soon," Nathan promised. "Once I make partner, things will be different. I'll figure something out." The recording continued for 20 minutes, mostly silence but occasionally broken by sounds and words that made my stomach turn. I exported the file to my email, then to my laptop's evidence folder. Then I deleted my sent email from his phone so he'd never know I'd found it. When Nathan emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, I was reading a book in bed, my expression peaceful. He kissed my head as he walked past. "Good book?" he asked. "Very good," I replied, smiling up at him. "It's about patience." At my own office the next week, I started digging into Nathan's firm's policies on expense reports and workplace relationships. My position at Belmont Financial had taught me exactly how to spot financial irregularities, and I knew where to look. Using the dates from Nathan's expense reports, I cross-referenced them with Sabrina's social media posts. Hotel locations matched up perfectly with her check-ins, though she'd been careful never to tag Nathan or mention his name directly. Then I found something even more interesting. Several expense claims were submitted under Nathan's login credentials during times when, according to his calendar, he'd been in client meetings. Someone else had accessed his account to submit fraudulent claims. I pulled up the reports in question. They showed charges for dinners, transportation, and accommodations that didn't match any actual client visits. The amounts were small enough not to trigger automatic audits, a few $100s here and there, but over 6 months, they added up to nearly $15,000. The claims were smart, almost. But whoever filed them had made small mistakes. Wrong dates on receipts. Duplicate submissions from different accounts. The kind of error someone would make if they were getting comfortable, thinking nobody was watching. I documented everything, creating a clear trail that connected the fraudulent claims to specific dates when Nathan and Sabrina were together. I spent a weekend preparing an anonymous package. Inside a plain manila envelope, I placed printed copies of everything I'd found, screenshots of text messages between Nathan and Sabrina, photos from his cloud backup showing them together, expense reports with highlighted fraudulent claims, and documentation showing the pattern of overnight stays charged to the company. I included a typed, anonymous letter explaining the timeline and pointing out specific policy violations regarding workplace relationships and expense fraud. I kept my tone professional and factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. On Monday morning, I drove to a post office across town, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. I mailed the package to the attention of Nathan's firm's board of directors, using a return address from a business park on the other side of the city. Then I went to work at my own office, attended my meetings, and completed my projects as if nothing had changed. That evening, Nathan came home in a good mood, talking about a potential promotion. "Things are really coming together," he said, pouring himself a drink. "Victor mentioned expanding my team. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." I smiled and congratulated him, asking about his day, playing the supportive wife while knowing the package would arrive at his office the next morning. The call came during Nathan's morning commute on Wednesday. I heard his phone ring from upstairs where I was getting ready for work. He answered quickly, his voice professional. "Nathan speaking." I moved closer to the stairs, listening to the one-sided conversation. "What? I don't understand. What kind of meeting?" His tone shifted from confident to confused. "Yes, I can come up right now. Is everything okay?" A pause, then, "No, I haven't seen any package." "What's this about?" He ended the call, and I heard him taking the stairs 2 at a time. He appeared in our bedroom doorway, his face pale. "I have to go to the office early," he said, already grabbing his briefcase. "Victor wants to see me immediately. Something about an urgent matter." "Is everything okay?" I asked, concern perfectly painted on my face. "I don't know. Probably just some client issue." But his voice wavered with uncertainty. He left in a rush, forgetting to kiss me goodbye. I waited until his car disappeared down the street, then got ready for my own workday with careful precision. Today would be interesting. Nathan didn't come home until after 9 that night. When he stormed through the front door, his face was flushed with anger and panic. I was sitting on the couch, reading the same book I'd been pretending to read for weeks. "Someone's trying to destroy me," he shouted, throwing his briefcase onto a chair. "Someone sent the board a bunch of lies, making it look like I'd been doing something inappropriate with Sabrina and stealing from the company." I set down my book, my eyes wide with manufactured shock. "Oh my God, Nathan. Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but they compiled all these photos and emails out of context, making it look like we're having an affair." He paced the living room, running his hands through his hair. "It's ridiculous. Sabrina and I work together, of course we travel together sometimes. Of course we have meetings and work dinners. What did the board say? They're launching an investigation. Can you believe that? Years of excellent work, and they're treating me like a criminal because of some anonymous package of lies." I stood and wrapped my arms around him, feeling his heart pounding against my chest. "It'll be okay. The truth always comes out. They'll investigate and see it's all a misunderstanding." He held me tight, and I felt his body relax slightly. "You're right. Thanks for not believing the worst of me." "I trust you," I said softly, the lie tasting like victory on my tongue. Sabrina called the next evening while Nathan and I were eating dinner. His phone buzzed, her name lighting up the screen. He glanced at it, then at me, clearly uncertain whether to answer. "You should probably take that," I said gently. "If you're both in trouble, you need to coordinate your story." Relief flashed across his face. "You're right. I'll just be a minute." He stepped into his office, closing the door but not quite latching it. I quietly moved closer, standing in the hallway where I could hear his side of the conversation. I know, he said, his voice low and soothing. "They fired you? God, I'm so sorry, Sabrina. This is all so unfair." A pause while she spoke. "No, Celine doesn't suspect anything. She's been completely supportive. She thinks someone's trying to sabotage my career." Another pause. "We just need to ride this out. Don't contact me for a while, okay? Let things settle down. Once the investigation clears us, we can figure out what's next." I heard movement and quickly returned to the dining room, settling back into my seat. Nathan emerged a moment later, his expression troubled. "Sabrina's devastated," he said, sitting down heavily. "They terminated her this afternoon. No severance, nothing. Just escorted her out of the building." "That's horrible," I replied, taking a sip of wine. My face showed appropriate sympathy while inside, satisfaction bloomed warm and bright. The following Monday, Nathan dressed in his best suit for what he thought would be a meeting to clear up misunderstandings. He'd spent the weekend preparing his defense, going over timeline explanations and reasonable justifications for every piece of evidence in the anonymous package. "It'll be fine," he told me that morning, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror. "Once I explain everything properly, they'll see it's all been blown out of proportion." I straightened his collar, standing on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. "I know you'll handle it perfectly. You always do." He left confident, maybe even a little cocky. He'd talked himself into believing the evidence could be explained away, that his reputation and history with the firm would outweigh some anonymous accusations. I went to work at my own office and tried to focus on my projects. But my phone stayed on my desk, volume turned up, waiting. The call came at 2:30. Nathan's voice was barely recognizable, high-pitched with panic. "They suspended me," he choked out. "Legal counsel was there, HR, the whole board. They have everything, Celine. Everything. Photos, emails, expense reports showing Sabrina and I were." He couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm coming home," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We'll figure this out together." But I didn't leave work early. I stayed at my desk for another hour, finishing my reports, because I wanted him to sit alone in our house, feeling the walls close in. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan's career collapsed in spectacular fashion. Someone, not me, I made sure to have an alibi, leaked the story to industry contacts. Within days, whispers became conversations. Conversations became posts on professional networking sites. Tech firm VP suspended amid fraud investigation and inappropriate relationship with subordinate. The articles never named Nathan directly due to legal concerns, but everyone in Boston's consulting world knew exactly who they meant. Clients started requesting different account managers. Colleagues who'd praised Nathan's work last month now avoided him in the hallways during his supervised visits to collect personal items. I watched it unfold with the same calm expression I'd maintained for months. At home, I comforted Nathan through his panic attacks and rage. I held him when he cried, assured him we'd get through this together, and privately documented every confession he made when he thought I was his only remaining ally. I was stupid, he admitted one night, drunk on whiskey and self-pity. The affair was a mistake. But the expense reports, I didn't submit those. Sabrina must have used my login. I stroked his hair, saying nothing, letting him dig his hole deeper. During the chaos of Nathan's suspension, I received a phone call that changed everything. Victor Hammond, the CEO of Sterling Consulting, Nathan's firm's biggest competitor, wanted to meet with me. Ms. Tate, his assistant, said professionally, Mr. Hammond would like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. He's been following your work at Belmont Financial. We met for coffee at a neutral location. Victor was in his 60s, sharp-eyed and direct. I'll be honest, he said after we exchanged pleasantries. Your husband's firm is in trouble. They're losing clients, losing credibility. We're positioning ourselves to absorb their key accounts during their vulnerable period. I sipped my coffee, waiting. We need someone who understands financial systems, someone detail-oriented and discreet. Your reputation at Belmont is excellent. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Strategic Operations. The timing was perfect, almost suspiciously so. Why me? Why now? Victor smiled slightly. Because someone with your skills, someone who understands how to identify irregularities and protect company interests, is exactly what we need. And because, frankly, I imagine you could use a fresh start. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. I accepted his offer that same afternoon. 6 weeks after Nathan's suspension became a termination, Sterling Consulting completed its acquisition of his former firm's client portfolio. I started my new position the same week, moving into a corner office with a view of Boston Harbor. On my third day, I was leaving the building when the elevator doors opened, and Nathan stepped out of the adjacent one. He was carrying a cardboard box, personal items from his office, no doubt, as the firm completed its final shutdown of his department. We stood 5 feet apart in the marble lobby. He looked older, defeated, the confidence that had once defined him completely gone. His suit didn't fit quite right anymore, he'd lost weight from stress. Our eyes met. His widened with recognition, confusion, then slowly, understanding began to dawn. Celine, he whispered, looking from my professional attire to the employee badge hanging from my neck. You work here? I smiled faintly, the same way he'd smiled at me all those times he'd dismissed my concerns. I do. Director of Strategic Operations. But how, when, he couldn't form the question. People were walking past us, colleagues who'd worked with Nathan before the scandal. They glanced between us, recognition and curiosity on their faces. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, preparing to leave. Same time tomorrow? I said softly, echoing Sabrina's text from that night months ago. I walked past him into the bright afternoon, my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor. Behind me, I heard the box slip from Nathan's hands, contents spilling across the lobby. I didn't turn around. That evening, I sat in my new apartment. I'd moved out of our house 2 weeks earlier while Nathan was staying with his mother, and opened a bottle of wine. My phone buzzed with congratulations from Mira, from my parents, from colleagues at my new firm. Nathan sent a single text message, "It was you, wasn't it? Everything?" I didn't respond. Let him wonder. Let him piece it together slowly the way I'd pieced together his lies. The thing about being called crazy is that it teaches you to trust yourself absolutely. When everyone around you questions your reality, you learn to document, to verify, to prove. You become meticulous because you have to be. Nathan called me paranoid, but paranoia is just pattern recognition that people want to dismiss. He called me crazy, but crazy is just a word men use when women refuse to accept their lies. I poured myself another glass of wine and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Nathan was explaining to his mother how he'd lost everything. Somewhere, Sabrina was probably doing the same. And me? I was exactly where I'd planned to be, successful, independent, and finally free. He called me crazy. But the thing about crazy women? We notice what everyone else ignores. We remember what everyone else forgets. And when the time is right, we make sure the truth comes out. Always.